yafe hayom, Shabbat shalom, ma yafe hayom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. Ma yafe, how good. Ma yafe hayom, Shabbat shalom, ma yafe hayom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. One last time, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom to our intimate crowd in the garden room, who, if you are fully vaccinated and you are comfortable, you are welcome to take off your mask. Shabbat shalom if you're streaming in. I hope there are throngs more out there helping us complete our minyan. But it is good to be together at the end of the week. And it is also good to be indoors, to get to sing and to hold, for those of us who are here at least, one of the gifts is to hold our siddur again in our hands and to use it. So tonight we will incorporate some of the readings that maybe we've been missing all these months, not having Mishkan Tefillah with us. Beginning on page 125, a little kavanah and intention before we light candles. Where has this week vanished? Is it lost forever? Will I ever recover anything from it? The joy of life, the unexpected victory, the realized hope, the task accomplished. Will I ever be able to banish the memory of pain, the sting of defeat, the heaviness of boredom? On this day, let us keep for a while what must drift away. On this day, let us be free from the burdens that must return. On this day, Shabbat abide. Help us to withdraw for a while from the flight of time, contain the retreat of the hours and days from the grasp of frantic life. Let us learn to pause, if only for this day. Let us find peace on this day. Let us enter into a quiet world this day. On this day, Shabbat abide. So as we take a breath in, whether at home or in our garden room, we prepare ourselves to welcome Shabbat, kindling Sabbath lights. The blessing can be found on page 120. Marceline, if I could invite you to help us light those candles. We're inside, so we can use live flame again. If you are at home, I invite you to kindle some lights as well with us. Oh, they gave you real matches. Do you need help? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Shabbat. And we raise a glass, adding a little sweetness to our Shabbat. I invite you, if you would like, to rise, and please join me. Blessing is on page 123. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho me'ahavahu v'ratzon inchilanu, zicharon l'maaseh bereshit, ki hu yom techila l'mikra'e kodesh, zecher l'tziat mitzrayim, ki vanu v'charta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, v'shabbat kodshecha, ve'ahavahu v'ratzon, hinchaltanu, baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh Shabbat. Amen. L'chaim. Always good to have some of the choir here. You may be seated as we joyously welcome in Shabbat with some excerpts from Kabbalat Shabbat, literally receiving the Sabbath. On page 131, we sing together from Psalm 96, first at the top, and then the second paragraph as well. Shiru l'Adonai, shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz, shiru l'Adonai, baruch shemo, asru b'yom le'yom yeshuato, sapru v'goyim kevodo, v'chol ha'amim nifleotam, just yai, you don't even need a book. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. And the second paragraph on that same page. Yasmachu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz, yismachu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz, yiram hayamim lo, yiram hayamim lo, yiram hayamim lo, yiram hayamim lo, yasmachu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz, yismachu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. Before we sing Lecha Dodi on page 138, I invite you, as is the custom, as Shabbat is coming in, to think back over your week, perhaps drawing to mind some moment that you do want to hold on to carry into Shabbat. If you're sitting next to somebody, here or at home, I invite you maybe even to share that moment with them. Something from your week that was good that you want to bring with you into Shabbat. Can take a moment, or just think about it to yourself. I'll share, the podium blocks it a little bit, but I'm 7 months pregnant now, and I had a sonogram this week, and the doctor even switched it onto the 3D setting, which is like totally wild. And so I got a little glimpse of this punim inside, and it was nothing short of miraculous. So I'm carrying that image into my head as we go into Shabbat. I know some have had a harder week, but for all of us, we welcome in the Shabbat bride with hopes for a sweet Shabbat. We'll sing together verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. And for us in this space, when we reach that final verse, it's our custom to rise and face the door. To greet the presence of Shabbat. Shalom. We remain standing either in body or spirit as we turn to our formal call to worship, Baruch Hu, page 146. Yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Yai lai yai lai 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 yai lai lai lai. This adaptation of our evening blessing. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Borei yom v'layla golel or mipnei choshech golel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or. Roll into dark, roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto le'olam va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto le'olam va'ed. You may be seated. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom alevavecha v'shinatam levanacha v'dibarta ba'am v'shivtecha b'veitecha Uv'lechtecha v'derech, uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha, ug'shartam lehot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, uv'isha'arecha, Leman tiskeru vasitam bakol mitzvotai v'tem kedoshim leloechem Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim li'olachem Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem Emet. On the top of page 157, I've missed this passage, not having our book. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. I don't know how many of you have been walking around New York City or maybe seen on social media the giant billboards that went up in Times Square this week, produced or funded, I don't know, by an organization called Jew Belong, giant neon-lit billboards that called out the spike in anti-Semitism that we've been seeing in the country, with various, some are more pithy than others, but little phrases about, opening your eyes, or about we're only, several decades from the gas chambers, so there's a reason that Jews are alarmed. And then there was a little bit of pushback. There was a flurry, at least among the rabbinic community that I'm a part of. Are these the most effective ways to combat anti-Semitism? Is this just going to draw more ire from people in the streets? Is it even necessary? And just a few days later, the stabbing of a Chabad rabbi up in Boston affirms, yeah, unfortunately, it's still necessary. We are still somehow living at a time where not all Jews are safe to walk down the street wearing a kippah, where people of color are not safe to walk down some streets just in their own skin, where peace is sorely missing in so many places in the world. So as we turn to page 161 for our Hashkivenu prayer, we pray that we may yet live in a time where everyone can feel safe being whoever they are, wherever they are, certainly in our country, in Israel, across the world, we hope. So we'll start on the left side of the page, let there be love, and then we'll migrate across to the Hebrew as we sing. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Hashkiveinu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkiveinu, Leshalom. Hashkiveinu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkiveinu, Leshalom. Let there be love. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Brian, did you just turn the piano into a harp?
It's a guitar, but
It was beautiful. I loved it. With angel's wings. Friends, we turn now to our tefillah on page 164, rising either in body or spirit. We'll sing together these opening lines and then just take a couple of quiet minutes to gather gratitude this Shabbat. 178. Shalom Rama Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rama Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki hatahu malach Adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rava Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rava Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov meinachat levarech et Amcha Yisrael. B'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rava Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rava Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. We pray for Shalom Rav, for a great expansive peace, for wholeness, and for healing. For our world, and of course, for so many individuals in our own lives and our community. As we turn to 371 in the middle and prepare for our Misha Berach, our prayer for healing, we, of course, call to mind and speak out loud the names of those loved ones to whom we want to direct those prayers. In particular, this Shabbat, our temple family is praying for the healing of Alan Bogner, Harriet Lipton, Hannah Stampleman, Enid Elton, Louise Elton, Bonnie Davis, Lori Weinberg, David Goldstein, Stanley Tereski, Bob Glassman, Marty Feldner, Andy Rosenthal, Patricia Zapata, Abraham Yochanan Dov Lesser, Louis Siegel, Nate Moskowitz, Ari Fox, Keith Schoen, Barbara Peabody, June Foreman, Isabel Fenster, Paul Wiggins, Jody Kahn, Joseph Spinelli, Lawrence Cohen, Susie Wolfson, Antonia Nalita Chipola, Harriet Katz, Pat Ryan, Samuel Phillip, Jerry Golner, Ian Spear, Norton Blumberg, Terry Rossman, Julie Ross, Deb Margolin, Paul Stampleman, Scott Siegel, Greg Kellner, Daniel Foley, and George Simonoff. We pray too for the complete recovery and healing of Rabbi Shlomo Naginsky, who I mentioned was just awfully stabbed and attacked up in Boston, and for all those who are recovering from the tragic collapse of the buildings in Miami at Surfside. We pray for those who can be healed. May they. And we add, of course, any names out loud here, or invite you to speak those names aloud too, as we pray together for all of their healing. Makor habracha laimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. So I can only imagine one of the reasons we're few but mighty in the garden room. But I don't know, maybe the game was even rained out. But it's the beginning of the Subway series tonight, is it not? The famous Subway series, these were always my father and my brother's favorite games they look forward to all year. Perhaps some of you do too, where the dueling New York teams head off at home. Now, I happen to come from a family of Mets fans. They're doing pretty well right now, although my dad's acronym for them was "My entire team sucks." And he said, though, it was a very Jewish thing to root for the Mets because we Jews root for the underdog, and most of the time they were. Despite my Mets pride, I was actually captivated this week by a story about the Yankees, and no, not their losing streak recently, but actually a feel-good story. Maybe you saw it, buried amidst all the dire headlines in our world, about a retired Jewish social worker from Connecticut whose dream of 60 years was finally realized this Monday at Yankee Stadium. Some of you are nodding your heads, you know what I'm talking about. In case you missed this very sweet story, here's the recap. Back in June of 1961, at age 10, now 70-year-old Gwen Goldman wrote to the Yankees to ask if she could serve as a Batgirl for some of the games that summer, as was the custom for young people. But to her dismay, though probably not surprising in the early 60s, the then general manager, Roy Hamey, responded with this letter. He wrote, "While we agree with you that girls are certainly as capable as boys, and no doubt would be an attractive addition on the playing field, I'm sure you can understand that in a game dominated by men, a young lady such as yourself would feel out of place in the dugout." Ouch. And yet, how many women have experienced some moment like this over the course of their lives? But here's the feel-good part, because I promised you it's a feel-good story. A couple of months ago, Gwen's daughter, Abby, sent a copy of that rejection letter that her mother had kept all these decades to the Yankees general manager, Brian Cashman, who agreed that it was high time to right the wrong. And referencing hopes that he had for his own daughter, Cashman graciously replied, "Some dreams take longer than they should to be realized, but a goal attained should not dim with the passage of time." And so, Cashman invited Goldman, 70-year-old now, Gwen Goldman, to be the Batgirl for Monday's game against the Angels with great fanfare. When she strolled into Yankee Stadium, I read, she was greeted and presented with a locker that had her name on it. Goldman threw out the ceremonial first pitch and stood alongside the manager for the national anthem. And then in between innings, the scoreboard actually played a video chronicling her story. It was part, all of this, of the Yankees' annual Hope Week, HOPE being an acronym for helping others persevere and excel. A sweet story indeed. Well, this symbolic victory on Monday echoes other significant strides that women have made recently in the sports industry, which is, of course, still very much dominated by men. In November, Kim Ng was named general manager of the Miami Marlins, the first woman to ever run an MLB team's operations. A San Francisco Giants assistant coach, Alyssa Nakken, was added to the on-field staff last year. Little things, but moving forward. And though admittedly I'm not such a sports fan myself, I revel in each of these milestones as a female rabbi, raising 2 daughters who myself only met a woman rabbi once I was in college for the first time. Whether young girls are dreaming of stepping into the dugout or onto the bima, aspiring to be a pilot or a physicist, we know this much is true. Until she has a concrete model of a woman in that role to see, she cannot even begin to fully imagine herself in it. I know that was at least true for me personally. This coming year, we'll be marking the Jubilee, the 50th anniversary of the first female rabbi being ordained, my extraordinary, courageous colleague, Sally Prezan. Technically, the second, there was one before in Germany, but the first here in America, and the first in our movement. And in this week's Torah portion, we meet 5 of the very first feminists in our Bible. It's Parshat Pinchas, the namesake for whom is a zealot who you'll study in Chavra Torah tomorrow morning in his problematic act of impassioned rage and the violence that ensues. But I want to focus on another part, on these women, often overlooked. As the Israelites are near the end of their 40-year wilderness trek, and they're counted again in a census, assignments start to be made for how the land of Israel that they're about to enter will be allotted according to their tribal affiliation and passed down every generation from father to son. A question is brought before Moses. What if a father has no sons? Moses explains the land will then be inherited by whomever the closest male kin is, a brother, a son-in-law, nephew, and so on. Thus is God's law. Well, enter the daughters of Zelophehad, 5 women named, which is significant in the Torah, Machla, Noah, Hogla, Milcah, and Tirzah, who come before Moses and all of the Israelite chieftains to plead that they themselves should be able to inherit their late father's parcel of land directly. Imagine it. These 5 young women had the holy chutzpah to show up uninvited at the entrance of the tabernacle, where only the high priests and the tribal heads congregate. And they proclaim in front of everyone, "Our father died in the wilderness, and he has no sons. Let not our father's name be lost to his clan just because he had not a son. Give us a holding among our father's kinsmen." Perhaps even more astonishing than the women's plea themselves is the fact that Moses and God respond quite progressively. Moses immediately seems to recognize that there is some merit to their case, but knows that he can't amend God's laws personally, and so turns to the higher authority. And in an unexpected but delightful surprise, God unequivocally supports the sisters' demands, instituting a new and permanent law to secure inheritance for any daughters in such circumstances. It is, in a sense, the first documented landmark case of a successful fight for women's rights in the ancient world. And it is one in particular that our Orthodox women really look to as a foundational text and take their bearings from as they try to advocate for more expanded rights in the Orthodox community. As Orthodox feminist scholar Sarah Edith Schneider points out, from a halachic, from a Jewish legal perspective, these 5 women literally penned one of the 613 commandments. And so because of that, she says, surely women have a stake in the other 612 and a claim to try to keep interpreting them. Even for us, of course, living in a far more egalitarian world, this week's Parsha is also just a broader ethical reminder that just because something has been a certain way in society for a long time doesn't mean it can't and shouldn't change. Right now, even before the recent Supreme Court ruling, our Reform movement and its Religious Action Center are helping lead the charge, for instance, to fight voter suppression in our country and many other forms of institutionalized racism, ways in which we have simply just functioned for so many years because that's how it's always been. It's our responsibility, of course, to be like the daughters of Zelophehad, to stand up and say, hey, some of this actually needs to change. That is our inheritance from the daughters of Zelophehad, from our Torah portion this week, that we keep moving our world towards justice and equality, towards freedom and liberty for all. Not just this July 4th weekend, but each and every day. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be so. So friends, as this next prayer tells us, Aleinu, it is on us. We turn to the concluding portion of our service, page 586, and I invite you to rise in body or in spirit. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'tein gedula le'otzer breshit, shelo asanu k'vei ha'aratzon, v'lo samanu k'mishpachat ha'adama, shelo sam chalkeinu kahem, v'goralinu k'chol hamonam, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום As we prepare for Kaddish on page 598, and we think about this notion of legacy from this week's Torah portion, what we inherit from those who came before us, whether it's land, physical possessions, whether it's facial features, inner qualities, the wisdom and the love. We think of all those who came before us. And in particular, we mourn the deaths of those for whom a yahrzeit is observed in our community this week. We remember and think of with reverence Ann Bauer, Raymond Kahn, Anita Zeiler, Pauline Grilly, William Isaac Reich, Mitchell Fine, Julia H. Freeborg, Herbert Sperling, Evelyn Miller, Rosa Evans, Ruth Fetter Elton, Carol Bland, Jane Goldstein, Adele Schiff, Lorraine Urey, Saul Keyes, Phyllis Golding, Miriam Arnau, Frances Ruth Gerwitt, Rose Goldman, Alex Mandel, Lillian Taylor, Marjorie Isaac, Carol Posen, Wesley Mark Katz, Lowell Rutkov, Estelle Coven, Ruth Cohn, Maury Medwick, Bill Cannister, and Wilfred Friedman. And we add to those names those for whom a period of shloshim, of 30 days of mourning, continues to be observed. Stephen Battaglia, son of Dolores Battaglia, Julian Hertz, father of Stephanie, Jennifer, grandfather of David, Maddie, Nikki, and Sammy. Saul B. Cohen, husband of Miriam, father of Luis and Deborah, father-in-law of Donald and Oded. Sylvia Engelson, grandmother of Beth Metzendorf. And though the funeral will take place on Tuesday and has yet to be announced, we also mourn the loss of David Mitchell, father of Jennifer and Heather, husband of Ellen, grandfather of Charlie, Max, Benjamin, and Miles. Of course, we think too about those 20 names we know so far, and probably 100 or more that we haven't yet heard, who lost their lives tragically in Miami at Surfside. We mourn with their families and with the significant Jewish community that's grieving down there. If you are thinking of someone, saying Kaddish for someone whose name you didn't hear, I invite you to add that name as well at this time. We pray that their memories may continue to be a blessing and illuminate our lives as we join together in Kaddish, page 598. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach yiruteh ve'amlich malchuteh, b'chayachon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv imru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevorach leolam ulmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei kudasha barichu le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for a blessing. So with summer services, not a lot of announcements. Check your weekly email. We have a new communications coordinator, so it's been spruced up a little bit. And check out, I have a new studies series coming up on Pirkei Avot. There's some clergy cocktail gatherings. And of course, we're getting into our summer service leaders who will be taking the helm the next several weeks. And friends, I thought it's July 4th weekend. We should end with the Star Spangled Banner. So the words can be found on page 679 if you need them. And I invite you to imagine an American flag if you don't have one nearby as we sing in gratitude for independence in this country. Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Play ball. Let's go, Mets. Shabbat shalom. Oh, there's another verse. It's true. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, DJ. Shabbat shalom.